So as we talk about reparations, and it is a demand for a payment that is owed for the unpaid labor of slavery, the racialized terrorism, Jim Crow. It is many things is breaking down that I want you to watch this particular clip because they broke down exact cost of how much reparations should be, how much the U.S. government should owe to Black Americans, those of us who are descendants of African slaves here in this land. Let's roll that clip.
Some presidential candidates are also weighing in on that thought and discussing reparations for the descendants of slaves in the U.S. And Chris, I know you've been following the cost of what that might look like.
I always think of the cost.
Yeah, well,
Right.
you always got to tally the cost up. American voters think about the cost too. So
Right.
what actually is the cost?
$17.1 trillion.
Nothing.
Small pennies.
Pennies.
Pennies on the dollar. Well, look, so we have first the unpaid wages that did not go to slaves. That's $12.9 trillion. And then you also have the lingering economic impact from Jim Crow, from redlining, from the criminal justice system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's $4.2 trillion, and we've got $17.1 trillion. So the big question isn't so much how much is it going to cost, but rather who is going to be receiving reparations and how exactly are reparations going to be paid out. This is not the first time the United States, I need to make that clear, the United States has paid restitution to groups it has wronged before. Native Americans, not at all the amount that they deserved or to the amount of people that they impacted, but Native Americans have received reparations. Japanese people that were in internment camps received reparations. So this isn't something that is necessarily new to the United States government. And right now we have this bill, H.R. 40, that's being debated in the House, or that received its first hearing in over a decade last week. And essentially that's what the bill is to find out. It's not necessarily to say we're going to give reparations, but it's to say who exactly should be receiving.
So who would it be? Who would get? How many people?
So right now they say approximately 30 million people, but still they have to come up with a proposal of who deserves reparations.
$17 trillion.
I don't know if it would
I mean,
necessarily apply to you.
I would argue that as a white man in America, you've received the benefits that have.
That's what we're talking about here too.
But I know a lot of white men in America that if you just looked at their financial situation and didn't see their color or where they came from, you'd be like, that guy hadn't benefited. Right here in New York, within 1 block of here. That guy hadn't benefited at all. He has no money in savings, has no retirement, has no investments. He doesn't have a home. He has an education. He's got plenty of debt.
He might not have benefited from America, but he certainly hasn't been harmed by it either.
Well, this is what we're talking about.
That is the entire part.
Yeah, but the question is, okay, my grandfather was born on a ship on the way over here. So he never had papers to work in the United States. And so he had to do things in the darkness of jobs in this country. So should he have been entitled something because somebody missed his papers?
Or you start to look at other people too. I was talking about the immigration crisis in this country as well, and you talk about other people that might be impacted by whatever inequalities exist in this country as well.
It's not a new thing.
And you do start to realize, okay, if this does get applied, and as you mentioned, it has happened before, there's a historical precedent. The Japanese internment camps as well as Native Americans.
And globally as well.
Across the board.
Germany paid restitution out essentially because of the Nazis, and they paid out to the Jewish people and to the state of Israel reparations. And actually, this bill has actually looked at proposals that actually would model a reparations payment plan, essentially, that would be modeled after Germany. Because lump sum payments aren't necessarily...
It'd be a huge economic boom if you distributed $17 trillion.
Yeah, we've seen that.
The wealthy people in this country are going to figure out, how do I get that money back?
But you're considering it as a lump sum payment, and a lot of people have said lump sum payments are not necessarily the best idea. What it is to take that money and to reinvest it into the Black community, to allow Black Americans to essentially regain some of the wealth that they were completely shut off from for hundreds of years. I mean, this is not the original sin that we can turn our back on that only lasted for 10 years. This is a slave trade that lasted for hundreds of years. This is Jim Crow. This is Black people unable to buy homes. This is Black people that are imprisoned.
You can also start to make the same arguments too. I mean, if we're talking about inequality, the gender gap is discussed all the time as well, and you can start to make the argument that the same kind of inequalities that existed for many years maybe women should also be
They
stimulated.
should, and they should.
We cannot-
Women
no,
should be.
we-
Politically,
Women should be.
politically, there's a
Listen,
lot of questions.
women should be.
As a woman, obviously, I want to address, inequalities when it comes to gender.
Yes.
We cannot, however, describe we need to stop doing this game of comparison where we like to compare the plight of Black Americans
But
with other groups.
politically, these are the questions that are going to be asked. If you start to pass this is what will hang in the balance here. If you're debating this, on
And
the
I
floor,
welcome the debate.
Yeah, I think.
I welcome the debate. I hope.
While we need
Congress takes
highways
up
and
the debate.
bridges.
Now, before I even get into this conversation about reparations, you saw the guy was trying to say, oh, well, there's a white guy that's poor and this. Let me tell you something. There may be some white folks that have dealt with things that have been poor. But one thing that white folks have not dealt with at all? Their skin color is not an obstacle for them. But being black, it's an obstacle for you with your skin tone. The racial structure in America is a political structure. It is a structure built on unwarranted privilege that was given to them by the slavery of African slaves. This is why that when I have $1, white folks got $18 to my every $1. What created that? Slavery. You have a system in America that when you look at white men, they're first hire and last fire on jobs. Their thoughts is considered. They're just about running the country. You look at the Senate, look all the faces in there. Who is that? White men. You look at the Congress, who is that? White men. Look at all the presidents of the United States, all been white men minus one. So this country has been slanted for a long time toward white men, for sure. And if I'm living in a country that has a great advantage for me, no matter what I do is an excuse for it. The police isn't killing me like that because, hey, the police look like me. So if they kill me, that's like them killing their own brother, right? But when it comes to black folks, hey, you just go ahead on and unload your gun on them for flinching. If they didn't make it in America financially and he's still on the street, even though with all this privilege and all this advantage that's here in America, then my opinion, they are a waste of white. What do you mean by a waste of white? Well, white is a political structured position here. So if you wasted that, then that's shame on you. Because black people, we have everything against us and we still make it a lot of times. We still have our sanity. Now let's get to this reparations conversation. This woman stated that it is $17.1 trillion. That sounds about right. It does. But then they always come up with, well, we got to figure out how we pay it, who to pay it to. It's not hard to figure that out. Matter of fact, it's easier to figure out who to pay it to because of the time period. We have all these genealogy websites. Records are all online now. It is so easy to trace family now versus back. Let's say if this was the 1980s or the 70s, etc., then reparations would have been much harder because it would took a lot of homework to find out about your family. But it's too easy now. It's very, very easy to find out if you had ancestors that came through the transatlantic slave trade. So that's really an excuse that they're giving because they don't want to have black people any kind of money. Now, if you put 17, like the guy said, I agree with, if you put $17.1 trillion into the American economy, that's like a stimulus package for the American economy. So through black people, they're going to stimulate the economy and businesses going to benefit. A lot of people benefit off of that $17.1 trillion. But at least you're atoning for your sins. You're atoning for it. Now, you have the same people that will say, I'm not going to pay this. Well, you don't have no choice about what you're going to pay. Donald Trump spending $2.5 million of the National Park Service money to put on his North Korea style parade that he wants. Well, you're not in control of that. So why do you think you would be in control if reparations were paid out? Why do you think you'd be in control of that? You're not in control of your tax dollars now. But when it comes to paying black people, you got, some people got so much hate in their heart. They don't want black people to have anything. But this is a debt that's owed. This is why, as black people, we must become reparations debt collectors and let them know every step of the way that you owe this. You owe it. Now, the reason why I'm going to tell you also, ladies and gentlemen, why they don't want to even hear the conversation about reparations. I'm going to really tell you why. Anytime we bring up reparations and we bring up the past, it's an open wound, okay? Because they have not atoned for that sin. They have kicked that sin down the road. And matter of fact, they say, I'm not going to atone for it because this is something that we built and we deserve this. And that's what a lot of them think. But they know in the back of their mind what they done. That's why they don't want it spoken about. This is why Dianne Feinstein says, just leave some things in the past. But the guilt and condemnation that a lot of them feel comes from them not atoning for that sin. Now, some of them may say, I don't have white guilt, and that's the ones that kind of don't have a conscience anymore. But people who actually do have a conscience that say, listen, we know what we did is wrong to you guys. We know what we're doing now that's wrong to you guys. And yet nothing has been atoned for that sin. So the only way that guilt will leave if you atone for that sin. This is why you get upset when we put pictures up or talk about, lynchings and whatever else. This is why I believe that anytime you're going to do any kind of, political statement, protest, etc., put those lynching pictures, put all those horrible terroristic acts on pictures with signs and say, hey, reparations, you have to pay what you owe. Put it up because they need to see and be reminded of why are you asking for reparations. They need to see that. Because see, they hide those pictures. They're in plain sight though. They're right there. You can find them so easily. Lynching photos. You have a whole lynching museum. A whole museum dedicated to lynching. That's how many people that were lynched in this country. But you don't want black people to have anything? No. The 17.1 trillion is what was owed. It just was owed to us, and you must pay that. This is not a discussion I'm having. This is not an argument or anything like that. Our conversation is directed at the U.S. government. This is what they owe. Well, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about this particular story with the reparations, and they have broke it down. It was a good breakdown of the 17.1 trillion. But, people always want to pocket watch when it comes to black people and say what they're going to do with the money, or we don't know if this one going to get money or whatever. Reparations need to be cash, period. If you didn't give anything else to the Japanese and, when it comes to black people, they say, oh, just invest it back into the communities. No, because most of the communities not even owned by black people. So you're going to be investing reparations money in black communities that black people don't own. The checks need to be paid out. That's how you will solve reparations.